Hi everyone, it's Lisa from IDreaminSoap. Now hopefully you've arrived at this video because you've watched the first part of the You Can Make This Soap landscape, and now you want to find out more about how to use the scrapers and how to do the calculations so you can work everything out for your soap. If, however, you've arrived here because maybe you've clicked on it because YouTube has showed you this video, it may not be what you want. If you're looking for a soap making video, this is not it. It's going over some calculations from a soap making video. So if you want to watch the actual soap making video, then there's a link to it in the description where I make the actual soap, or just go and search for my YouTube channel, IDreaminSoap, and then you'll find the soap making video there. Okay, so those of you still here, that's brilliant. I presume you're going to have a go at making this soap. So, have you got your downloads? If not, there's a link in the description, or just go to my website, IDreaminSoap.co.uk, and onto the downloads page, and you'll find them there. One's an Excel spreadsheet and one's a PDF download. And then what we'll do is we'll go through the scrapers first of all and how you alter those to make them fit your mould. And then we'll finish off by going through the spreadsheet, which will then show you how to calculate all the bits and pieces that you need for each of the various layers. So when you've downloaded your templates, you should end up with 2 sheets in a PDF format of these cutouts, and we're going to need all of these, and they're exactly the same as the ones that you saw me in the first video cutting out onto the cardboard. I'm just going to expand this a little bit so it's easier to work with. So we're going to work with just the very first scraper, but the same thing is going to be the same for all of them. So we've got a nice big first scraper here, so hopefully you can see that on your screen. And let's imagine that we've got a slightly larger mould. Now this will work whether you've got a larger mould or a smaller mould. So I've just roughly dropped in what looks like a bigger mould. Now the template that we've got is actually 7 centimetres wide, and it gives us a design of 7 centimetres high. And it's that we need to make to fit our mould. Now, one of the caveats that we've got with this is that this design is square. So if your mould isn't square, that's possibly not a problem. So as you can see with my mould that I've just dropped on here with this blue box, this isn't a square mould. So let's imagine that this mould is actually 8 centimetres wide by 10 centimetres high. That's absolutely fine. All that will happen in this case is that you're going to end up with your soap being 8 centimetres wide by 8 centimetres high. So it's just not going to completely fill your mould all the way to the top. Okay, so it will still work perfectly fine. Now, one thing just to be aware of, and it's only just purely because I needed to make these templates and these spreadsheets as straightforward as possible for people to be able to use. You can use a mould that is square by design, or one that is the width is actually narrower than the height, so what I've drawn on the screen here. What you can't use with this template is, let's imagine that we've got a mould that's more of a rectangle like this. Now, I'm not saying you can't have a rectangular landscape soap. Of course you can. It's just that it would have got too many variables in trying to work with everyone's possible shape of loaf mould to be able to deal with these as well. So what can you do in this situation? You either use a different mould, one that isn't as wide, or what you could do is you could take this mould that you've got, and you can even just drop in some bits of cardboard along the side. If you drop some cardboard or some foam board or something like that, wrap them in some cling wrap, that type of thing, and then you can go through and you can just make, if you've only got the one mould, you can actually make it work and make it come to sort of a square shape. And obviously that would depend how long versus how tall it is, but that would be one way round it. Okay, so we've discussed what type of mould you can use. Now let's work out how are we going to get this template into this mould and make it fill it properly. You're going to do that just literally by using the print function on your computer. So we know that we want to turn a 7 centimetre square little picture that we've got, and we want to make it into an 8 centimetre square picture. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, I want it to be 8, but at the moment it's 7. So divide it by what we've got, times it by what we want. And if you times that by 100, we end up with 114.286. So we need to grow our picture by 114.286%. That's a very accurate figure. We probably don't need to be that accurate. And what that'll do is, if you just printed this picture out at normal, it would give you a 7 centimetre by 7 centimetre picture. If you use your print function and print it out and grow the size of your printout, it will now give you an 8 centimetre by 8 centimetre picture. So let's just have a look at how we practically do that. Okay, so I've now just swapped into Adobe Acrobat, just because that's the most common program that people use when dealing with PDFs. So all you're going to do is you're going to go into your print function, so File, Print, and you should end up with a print dialog box. Now yours may be slightly different to this, but what you want to do is you want to find the sizing element with this. Now this may be something that you've never mucked around with before. Maybe you just print stuff out and that's how it comes out. But you can see with mine, I've got this bit that says page sizing and handling, and hopefully you can see this. I'm going to zoom it into the screen. You can see that we've got this custom scale. Okay, so somewhere in your print function, that's what you need to find. And that's where we put in our percentage. Okay, so as you can see, I'm going to change that to 114.286. And now what will happen is when you print that out by pressing your print button, you will get a picture that's 8 centimetres rather than 7 centimetres. Okay, so you're just going to do that for whatever shape mould that you've got. Now, if you've got a mould that's smaller, so say one that's 6 centimetres by 6 centimetres, then obviously that amount that you put under that custom scale is going to be less than 100, isn't it? It's going to be something like 85% or something. Okay, so that's how we alter this to get it to basically fit your mould. Now the next thing that we need to bear in mind is that the height of your mould might vary. So let's imagine we've got our now perfectly printed out size of our scraper, and that would drop into your mould. Bear in mind, remember we're doing this upside down, aren't we? So when you go and cut out your cardboard template, you've got your nice picture, and what you've got to bear in mind is you've got to cut your cardboard template out so that the base of it is the entire height of your mould. So therefore your picture will actually be further down your cardboard. And this is what I had as this little block here in my original design. Because my mould is actually 8 centimetres tall, I've got a 1 centimetre sort of little gap thing, and I add that on to get the right amount. Now, you want to do this after you've printed out your picture, because the problem is if you did it before and tried to add it to your little diagram, or if I added a box on for you, it wouldn't work as you print it out and grew it, because it would then, you'd have to do all sorts of maths to make sure you ended up with the right amount. So it's easier, print out your picture, and then with your cardboard, so for example with ours, I know that I would want my cardboard just to be 2 centimetres taller than my entire picture. I would actually make it maybe 3 centimetres taller, because what we want to do as well is add some little tabs, some little ears onto those. Now it doesn't matter how long or short those ears are, or whether they're the same either side. What they're going to do is they're going to be something for you to rest this template on to make sure that as you keep dragging it through the mould, then your scraping is going to be nice and even. Okay, so hopefully you've got that. First of all, get your picture, and when you go through the print function, work out how much bigger you need to make it. Then once it's at the correct width for your mould, you then need to say, okay, when I cut it out, it's going to be at the bottom of a piece of cardboard, and I just need to make my cardboard this sort of like T shape come to the top of my mould and reach down to the picture. And obviously just do the cardboard all the way around the back there, because that's what's going to make your scraper. And once you've got that, that red base bit just here will be the same for every single cutout, and obviously each of the cutouts will then change, and gradually you'll be removing little bits and pieces of those as you cut them out. Okay, so that's how we're going to deal with our templates. Okay, now let's move on to looking at the spreadsheet. Now what this spreadsheet is designed to do is to take all of the amounts of oils and everything in your soap and divide it up so you get the right amount for each of those layers. Now obviously with this type of technique you're always going to have some soap that is scraped out of the mould, and we can't avoid that, but I have actually made these layers as close as possible but still making sure that you're going to get good scrapings going through. Okay, so as we said in the first video, just make sure you've got yourself some little, guest soap moulds or something like that to plop the excess into. Okay, so what I've just done is gone through and I've numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, the steps, the things that you need to do. So first of all, I've just reminded you about your type of mould. Now I'm going to just grow this a little bit so we can see it a bit better. Okay, so hopefully you can see that nice and clearly. So yes, so first of all, that reminder that we are making a square shaped soap. So as it says in that first little block that you've got, if your mould's 7 centimetres wide by 8 centimetres tall, that's fine. If your mould's something like 9 centimetres wide by 8 centimetres tall, that's not fine, because remember we said that there's only limited things I can put through a spreadsheet. I can't make it work for every single type of mould. So you need to go through, are you using grams and centimetres or ounces and inches? I'm a grams girl, I prefer it. Well, I'm in the UK, that's what we use anyway. I do find them much more accurate though, so, if you did want to use them, it's not going to be a bad thing. So, stage 2, fill in all the orange boxes if we want to use grams, or all the blue boxes if we want to use ounces. So we're dealing first of all with our normal recipe that we would actually put and use for our soap. Now you're not trying to muck around and alter anything. We're presuming that this is a mould that you've used before and you know how much soap you normally put in and what type of bar that you get out of it. If you don't know that, if maybe it's a brand new mould, then you're dealing with a whole nother video of calculating how much soap you should be putting in it. I don't want to go there in this video. I'm just going to presume you know how much you normally put in to fill up your mould. So therefore you're just going to pop in there and say, right, I would normally put in, so for me in my mould I would normally put in 1040 grams of soap. Now this is our total oils that we're using, so thinking about how we build our recipe when we put it through our lye calculator. Okay, so the oils, not the total soap. How much fragrance do you normally use? Because this is going to calculate your fragrance oil for you per layer as well. So let's imagine we're going to pop in 5%, so just pop in a little 5 there. And then we need to think about our mould, because what this is going to do is going to take your normal amount of soap, it's going to increase it for the extra that you need because of the scraping we're going to do, and we're going to get everything proportionally correct for your size of mould. So I need to know your size of mould. So let's imagine with mine, my mould was 7 centimetres wide by 8 centimetres high. And can you see there, you got a little green flashy thing came up that said, yes, your mould is okay to use. Now let's imagine that you had a mould that was 10 centimetres wide by 8 centimetres tall. Can you see this again? It's just going to flash you up now a red message going, check your dimensions. This is not going to work in this situation. Now remember, as we said before, I'm not saying you can't make a landscape soap in a landscape shaped mould, but just for the flexibility of the spreadsheet, I couldn't cope with dealing with everything. Okay, so you can fill that in grams and centimetres or in ounces and inches. Now, what that's done is that's gone through and it's recalculated everything for us. So I'm going to go back and pop it in as a sensible mould that we could actually use. Okay, so this is what we've got. Now, can you notice in this situation that I've actually got to make up less oils than normal? If you look at this little bit that we've got here. Now, the reason that's the case is because I've put in that I normally get an 8 centimetre tall bar of soap, but I know this is going to make me a square bar of soap. So you can see it's actually reduced it down. Now, it's reduced it down a little bit, but it still has accounted for the extra oils you need because of the scraping. Okay, so it's taken into account both of those factors. Okay, so that's your adjustments. And then once you've got that, that's given you now the amount of oils that you need to go and put into your lye calculator, so whether that's soap calc or whatever. So you can pop in your oils under your normal recipe and set the amount of oils to that figure that you get. Then you, from your lye calculator, will know how you're going to make up your lye solution. So make your lye solution up and let it cool. And then I need you to tell me how much lye solution that you've got. Now, please, when you do your lye solution, you need to weigh it. Don't say, well, soap calc said it was 100 of water and 40 of lye, therefore it's 140, because that won't be right. Remember, your lye solution will change weight as it cools down because some of that will be lost by steam. Even if you cover it up, you will potentially lose some. If you add sodium lactate, pop that in as well, obviously when your lye's cooled down, and weigh the whole jug of lye. So let's say with my lye, I'm just going to put in a random amount. I haven't run this through soap calc. I'm not actually using this. This is just for figures for us. So let's pretend that our lye weighed 300 grams. Okay, so as you can see, I've now popped in my weight of my lye, and that is 300 grams. And what that's done now is that's worked everything out for us. So you can see we've got our layers down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've popped the picture in so you can just remember which each of those layers are. I've told you what they are as well. And then we've got our oil and lye made up each row. Now remember, you're going to make each of these amounts up individually, but what you want to do is make up your total oils all together. You know, you're not going to go and, could you imagine how ridiculous it would be to try and do a batch of oils at 32 grams with, maybe you've got 7 oils in there or something. You can make the whole lot up and you're going to pour off a little bit at a time. And the same with your lye. You've made up your entire batch of lye, and now you're just literally, this is just dividing it out for you and pouring the bits off. This is not telling you to make up this amount of lye solution. You've already got it made up. Okay, so that's how you're going to make up each of those layers. And as you saw me in the video, you're going to pour your oils in, put your lye solution in, bring it to trace, add your colouring, and then add your fragrance oil. And again, for this, I've worked out your fragrance oil per layer for you as well. Now remember guys, these figures are correct depending on what you put in. So if you put in your mould wrong, you're going to end up with wonky amounts. If you put in your lye solution incorrectly, then that's the wrong amount. So if you weighed your jug, for example, and you forgot to take away the amount of your jug, so you actually gave the weight of your lye including your jug, it's going to be wrong. So it does rely on you filling in this spreadsheet carefully. So as long as you fill it in carefully, then it will work really well for you. Okay, so there's our spreadsheet. Now, obviously, perhaps that seems a little bit more complicated than it actually is, but I wanted to go over it in quite a bit of detail. But realistically, it is just a case of, can you see, just filling in these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 figures. That's all I need you to do. The oils you normally use, the fragrance oil you normally use, the width of your mould, the height of your mould. Use that information to bung the amount of oils into your lye calculator, and then make up your lye and weigh your lye and pop that in that last box, and then that will then give you everything that you need. One last thing, you may be able to see on this row 30 I've got a bit that says to allow for errors. I've just put in a little tiny bit extra, and the reason for that is, you know, the situation that happens, you can measure everything out, and because of maybe we pour out a tiny bit too much, or we don't scrape our pots out properly or something, you're going to have a little bit of error. So that's just put in a little bit of error, because what I don't want is when you come to the path, which is only a small bit of batter, I don't want you to not have any batter left. So therefore, hopefully that little bit to allow for errors will compensate for any dodgy scraping or anything, or any weighing that you've done, only to a certain amount. You know, I've only put a tiny bit in there because I do want you to be accurate, and we don't want to be wasting soap. So if you end up with a little diddly bit left that you haven't used, then that's fine. Little bit of a warning there, do make sure you still weigh out your last amount for that path. Don't just presume that it's perfectly right. You still need to weigh your oils, you still need to weigh your lye, and put the correct amounts together so you don't have any sort of lye heavy or any weirdness going on. So I hope you do attempt this soap, and if you do, I hope it goes really well. I'd love it if you did make the soap, and if you share it on social media, then tag me in so I can see how you've done. Well, that's the end of this sort of rather techie little bit of the tutorial. I hope you found it useful, and as is normal, if you're not subscribed to my channel, why not consider subscribing? If you want to leave me a thumbs up, then that would be fantastic. Good luck with your soaps, everybody, and happy soaping.